Hi, I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Graham Noble, Sarah Calgill, Scott Cosenza, and David Patterson. And this is the Conservative Five, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. On today's episode, Swans in the Swamp, the investigation is over. And what do we know from the Durham Report? Apparently a lot. We'll talk about the progressives' desire to find fault where there is not in supremacy in the armed forces. Then we ask why Democrats can't seem to find anything to laugh about these days in the politics of humor. And finally, we pivot to our own quirky sense of the hilarious in Just for Fun, Volume 33. All this and more coming up in this edition of the Conservative Five. Stay with us. On May 15th, Special Counsel John Durham released his final report on Crossfire Hurricane, an investigation 4 years in the making. Now those on the right finally have evidence to back up their claim of a witch hunt. What did Durham accomplish? Well, actually quite a lot. Scott, take us through it.
Well, I didn't read all of the 300-page report, Lisa, but I read quite a bit of it, and
I'm shocked and disappointed.
Yeah, not just every word, but what sprung to mind was the first verse of Leonard Cohen's Everybody Knows song from 1988, which goes, everybody knows that the dice are loaded. Everybody rolls with their fingers crossed. Everybody knows that the war is over. Everybody knows that the good guys lost.
That's depressing.
It is depressing. I thought the report was profoundly depressing. I think it either means that just the FBI is completely and totally corrupt from the top on down and needs to be eviscerated, or that our entire republic may be a hollow vessel, because there was collusion to deny democracy in America, and it was by Hillary Clinton and her lieutenants and her allies in the big box media. That's what the report reveals. The principal findings of the report are that, as far as I'm concerned, and that the FBI violated their own standards when trying to initiate an investigation against Donald Trump for political reasons. Those are the big takeaways. And then the other sort of ancillary takeaways are the media has supported it and still does support it by not doing a massive mea culpa, which would be the only acceptable, I think, response to this from honest brokers. And then the other thing is we're now fighting a proxy war in Russia against Russia in Ukraine. And I think that war has been aided by this disinformation effort, that we may not have, we may not be in these hostilities to the extent we are. Flirting with World War III, in my estimation, as a result of this. And it's impacting the next election as well. Donald Trump is going to be using the release of this Biden Justice Department report. By the way, that's the auspices under which the report came out of. It's, Durham wrote it, but it is the Biden Justice Department that he works under. And we're going to see the reverberations of it continue into the future with more electoral issues. So it's a disaster all in, I think.
Well, you took up my next set of questions, which really, Graham, I wanted to talk a little bit about the media reaction to this. I mean, it seems like those who won Pulitzers for their Crossfire Hurricane coverage covered it, but they buried it. And, all the other people that were saying the whole time, this is a bunch of hooey. They are, really reporting on it. But it seems like much of America is not really aware of what happened in Crossfire Hurricanes in the Durham Report.
No, and the media's reaction to it, or should I say at least the left-leaning section of the media's reaction to it, is astonishing, because it's not so much that they have criticized the report. They haven't, as Representative Adam Schiff, I think, just recently said that the report was flawed. That's not the take they've done on it at all. They've gone the other way, and they've said this report is great because it shows that the FBI didn't do anything wrong and the whole thing was justified, and Donald Trump was colluding with the Russians, and that this is great. What a great report. It just totally vindicates what we said all along, which is how they managed to glean that from this report, which, by the way, I have read almost every word of, is just, it's incredible. It's a complete denial of reality. I mean, the report is no less than damning. I mean, I'm not going to, go through every single item that Durham brought up about how the FBI threw its own rule book out the window. But just the fact that they opened this full counterintelligence investigation based on no verified evidence whatsoever, and they didn't even go through their own procedure, which is normally when they open an investigation, they begin with an assessment, and then they go on to a preliminary investigation. And if by that time they feel that it's there's justification, they open a full investigation. That didn't happen in this case. They jumped basically right into the full investigation with no real kind of probable cause, if you like, at all. And but the media has just completely chosen to reinterpret this entire report the way they want to.
And so then guess who the people are going to believe? If Scott hasn't read 306 pages, I went through 306 pages and just skimmed and picked out things that, stood out. Graham's probably read the whole thing. I don't know about Dave, but you know what? Nobody's going to do that. No Joe Blow, no soccer mom. They're not going to do that. They're going to listen to CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News, and that's where they're going to get their information, because they're going to soundbite it down to one or two things, and that's what you're going to hear. They don't care. They're not going to read it. They're not going to analyze it all themselves.
Sarah, fair enough. But you, looking at this politically, what do you think, this means for Donald Trump and going forward in 2024? Next week, he's going to be facing two new challengers that are probably going to jump into the race, DeSantis and Tim Scott. And now this report has come out. Trump's been saying for years and years, this is a witch hunt. And now this humongous multi-million-dollar report says, yeah, you're right. What does this mean for Donald Trump?
I don't think it's going to move the needle. And unfortunately, that water is way past under the bridge. This needed to be dealt with while he was still in office. And that wasn't going to happen, and it didn't happen. And I don't think it's going to help him whatsoever. He wasn't elected in 2020 for a whole host of reasons, that maybe being one of them, but I don't think it was the only reason. I think people just were tired of the fights and the argument and the mean tweets, and
I think
look what we got now.
Him in the primary.
I don't think it's going to help him one way or the other. I really do think it's a nothing burger at this point.
Well, I was just in the primary. I think this helps him quite a bit. All of the media outlets that are not anti-Trump, like LibertyNation.com, for instance, interested in fairly reporting the news and the facts, we have to talk about this and how the hoax was about getting Donald Trump. And I think that has to accrue to his benefit in the primary. He gets to come out and say, because things had been trending against him. The tide of things with the January 6th reporting, I think it all worked sort of negatively for Donald Trump, even amongst conservative reports.
Oddly enough, Dave, point taken, Scott, but oddly enough, you say, Scott, that things have been working against him, but every time something goes against him, his numbers go up. I mean, he's indicted, his numbers go up.
They go up Republican. They go up in the party. They go up with the party base, the party soldiers.
That's where we are. That's where we are.
And
we're at the
GOP. But I mean, that doesn't help the Republicans take back the White House in 2024 whatsoever.
Well,
because
Dave,
the independents are the crazy people out there.
I hear what Sarah's saying, but on the other hand, many of these polls are broader than simply Trump's base. And they all show precisely the same thing, that whenever something untoward happens toward Trump, his numbers go up.
I know.
And so I don't think that you can just hang it on his base. I think there are a lot of independents who say, just a second, everybody's piling on here and it's simply not fair. And, the guy's got something to say. And I kind of liked what he did when he was the president. I mean, he did things that were substantively American, and what's not to like about that? So that's kind of where I am on this.
Any other final comments on Crossfire Hurricane? I mean, Trump all along was saying it was a witch hunt, and now it seems like the Durham Report is saying the same thing. Do you think? Let me ask you guys one question, and that is the fact that nobody really got hammered for this. There were a couple slaps on the wrist. Somebody got community service. That seems to be hampering this whole report. Should it?
Well, that also speaks to the fact that, and this is what the mainstream media is telling you, that there's only one person that got even remotely in trouble, a little slap on the wrist, and everything else was just boo hoo hoo. So if nobody pays the price, that's more evidence than anything else in the mind of the public.
I think too that there's, and I'll defer to Scott on this, but malfeasance and inability to do your job correctly, basically leaning toward a political bias, are not criminal offenses. But that's what's replete in this report.
Yeah. Well, finally, this chapter of the Trump presidency is closed. One wonders what will be the long-term implications. Thanks for watching, and thank you, panel. Progressives like Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer are bound and determined to find white supremacists in the U.S. military. These extremists are elusive little creatures, apparently, and the Department of Defense has advised Schumer and company to, well, stop looking. Under every rock, nook, and cranny is where they've been going, and that's what these progressive pals have been doing. But what have they found? Dave, you penned an eye-opener this week for Liberty Nation. Do tell.
Well, I think first, Lisa, I think you have to realize that, yes, there are bad people in America. There are people on the far left like Antifa and Black Lives Matter, but there are also bad people on the far right like Aryan Nation. But they're truly bent on tearing down, our institutions. But there's very little or no evidence whatsoever that such sentiments are found in the U.S. Armed Forces. However, progressives and liberals, they continue to want the rest of America to believe that solid citizens who join the military join to, further some white or other extremist agenda. The narrative, unfortunately, that's pushed by liberals and is designed by, purpose or by accident to reduce confidence in our institutions so they can be replaced by a liberal agenda. Institutions like the military. Well, the very first action Biden's Secretary of Defense took, it wasn't to explain how we're going to defeat America's real enemies like China and Russia, North Korea and Iran. No, he implemented a hunt for white extremists amongst the military. And what did he find? Well, his report that came out in December of 2021 found that of the 2.1 million patriots who joined the military, less than 100, which could be a number anywhere from 0 to 99, exhibited this kind of behavior. I hold the leadership responsible for this kind of stuff. And then they wonder why, recruiting statistics are so low. Who wants to join an organization when they walk through the door, they're immediately suspected of sedition?
Yeah. Graham, you've served in the military, though not the U.S. military, I don't believe.
No.
Did you find it was a hotbed of, racism or such?
Did y'all have like little manifestos tucked under your bunk?
Yeah.
When I was in the British Army, we did not at any time discuss politics or race or cultural issues or religious issues. It wasn't something that we ever concerned ourselves with. Back then, and this, of course, is we had just finished fighting the Romans back then, But we would have been totally dumbfounded and stunned if we had been hauled into one of our classrooms or whatever, or onto the parade square one day and told that we were basically being vetted for political extremism or white supremacy. We would have said a number of things that I cannot say on this show because it's
Thank you. Do not say them.
But we would have just been horrified. It was ridiculous. But I would just briefly say that the whole thing about this white supremacy is basically, it comes from the point of view that the the progressives, the people on the left, are always looking for a way to legitimize their persecution of their political opponents. And of course, in order to do that, they've got to somehow dehumanize them, or they've got to come up with some kind of label for them, which is so awful that it's like, well, if that person is, what you say is, well, then we can throw the normal conventions of constitutional rights out the window because they don't deserve it. So that's why they call people fascists. And I'm not going to go into the historical lesson, but fascism is an entirely left-wing philosophy begun by socialists. But they call people fascists, they call people Nazis, they call people white supremacists. It's just a way to dehumanize and say these people are so awful that it gives us the right to go after them.
Yeah, Scott, I know you're familiar with the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Leadership Council, right? I believe I have that right.
Southern Poverty Law Center, as I think.
Law Center, excuse me. You're familiar. They've done a lot of digging into this and not really come up with big numbers. So I guess maybe it wasn't surprising that they didn't come up with big numbers in the military either.
Well, it's curious that you mentioned them because they are just liars who make up stuff to advance whatever whatever they want, and they have zero credibility in the world of honest deliberation over information.
But they've had real trouble coming up with they've dug and dug and dug, and they've had real trouble coming up with numbers.
Yeah, they've gotten a little bit more scrutiny on their numbers after the revelations that keep coming out about how they basically don't like what somebody says, and so they'll put them on a sort of like anti-hate list or something like that. So I'm glad to see that they're less comfortable just simply making things up like they have been in the past. I think that to the extent that any of this goes on, if you listen to young men of fighting age who are devoid of political correctness, they may bandy about words that aren't suitable for a family-friendly video and not have any hate behind it, but literally just talking trash. That's one of the best things about being in a group of young men without having to confront political correctness is to engage in that sort of banter. So even what is discovered may be of that ilk. The one thing that the U.S. military has had in the past is a problem with street gangs going into them. So if there's any kind of, and those people are generally not Caucasians, by the way, they're of different races, but this just doesn't seem to be a problem, and I'm not worried about it.
Well, I think to that point, if you listen to the president in his speech at Howard University, where he says the most, not sort of, but the most important problem and threat that we have in the United States is white extremists. I wish he would tell his FBI that, because if you look at their most wanted list going down through the 42, you can't find a single one. And one would think that his Justice Department, if this is such a horrible threat to the United States, might have at least one. I take that back. They do have one. And that was the bomber of University of Wisconsin back in 1970, whom they have not caught yet.
Sarah, are we looking for trouble in all the wrong places here?
National security should be national security. They should protect everyone, including the crazy leftists and the crazy right wingers. That's what the military is designed to do, to protect the nation. Instead of focusing on if we can find some secret, TikTok video that shows that we're right, that the military is full of white supremacists, maybe we should be securing our border and redoing our thinking process on the war in Ukraine and maybe what happened in Afghanistan. All of these things are just abject failures. And, spending all your time and money and your first priority is to ferret out some, white bald guy that's mad at the world and throws a Confederate flag on his truck is ridiculous.
They should go back to looking for Captain Queeg strawberries.
All right. It seems Schumer and his ilk can't help themselves, but it sure would be nice to get back to the business of defending the nation, as Sarah just said. Thanks so much, panel. Well, you all probably know that Liberty Nation has added a much-needed feature, cartoonist Tom Stiglich, who keeps our readers amused on a daily basis. Surprise! He's here for our roasting and grilling pleasure, though I'm not sure he knows that yet. But first, our Liberty Nation satirist, Graham Noble. It's interesting that our chief political correspondent is also our resident satirist. What does that mean? Anyway, Graham Noble is going to explain the rise and fall of the political cartoon. Graham, 90 seconds. Hit it, baby.
Well, I'm not an expert cartoon historian, but I have some thoughts on the state of political humor. Henry Ward Beecher, an 1800s American clergyman, said, "A person without a sense of humor is like a wagon without springs. It's jolted by every pebble on the road."
Ah.
The people Beecher was talking about are nowadays referred to as snowflakes, and they are, for the most part, left-wingers. But it's a chicken and egg situation. Do leftists lack a sense of humor because they are bitter and angry, or are they always that miserable because they lack a sense of humor? Is this the same chicken that crossed the road? We don't know. But anyway, there's a cartoon that I came across that's called The Modern World, and it's an entirely political cartoon done by a left-winger. It's done as a storyboard, so it has like about 6 panes, and there is absolutely no humor in this cartoon strip at all. It's basically an angry rant against Donald Trump more often than not, or Fox News. And this is what comprises political humor on the left these days, just saying nasty things about their political opponents. They're trying to ridicule, but they don't get the subtle difference between ridicule and insult. The former is humorous, the latter is not. Satire mystifies them altogether, which is why they constantly fact-check the Babylon Bee, which ironically makes them an easy target for ridicule. But the left is afflicted by its own ideology. Conservatives believe that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is really all that matters. Left-wing political thought is rooted in constant conflict and struggle. Poor against the rich, oppressed against the oppressor, men who think they're women against the people who refuse to support that delusion, and so on. But ultimately, I applaud left-wingers for abandoning the concept of humor and mentally preparing themselves for the utterly miserable world they are trying to create. Now, as Lisa mentioned, we've got with us today Tom Stiglich, a cartoonist whose work is now featured on Liberty Nation under the section Liberty Lampoon. So, Tom, on behalf of the panel, welcome. And what I'd like to hear is, what is your take on the state of humor these days in America, political humor particularly?
Well, Graham, I have to agree with you. It does feel like half the country has lost its sense of humor, just based on some of the hate mail that I get on a daily basis. If you have a second, I print out a few of my most recent. If you want, I can read these to you. I'm sure you guys will get a kick out of them. If you just got a second, I could. Just in the last couple of weeks, your last cartoon is about as funny as a painful pocket of gas in my colon. You dine in Trump's colon. Strange back-to-back colon references. Stop making your unfunny and despicable cartoons. You, like all right-wing fascists, have to be silenced. And that's the part.
Wow.
It's the fact that they don't accept that there's a different point of view. They actually want to silence you, and that's the part that's no longer funny, and that should be concerning to everyone involved, really.
Tom, how do you keep your sense of humor about you and manage to, when you're getting, ugly things like that in the mail or on tweets or whatever, and still have to kind of come up with a funny cartoon in a day? What goes into your creating an actual cartoon?
I start off each day. I usually spend anywhere from probably 2 to 4 hours reading numerous publications. I still read
Liberty Nation first, of course.
Liberty Nation first and foremost. That's how I start the day. And you guys have great content. I mean, I'm just proud to be part of the team. I really am. I think it's a good fit. You just go in there and you even try to read opinions from both sides. You try to see, you try to feed through and weed through the mainstream media bias, that leans so far left. And it's really something that's probably happened in the last 10, 15 years. And then you just start your day and say, okay, what's the big topic? What do I want to tackle? What do I want to draw attention to?
Questions, panel, go.
I got one. In this climate, Tom, what inspires inspires you the most? I mean, we've got a bunch of weirdos out there running around playing like they're running the country or playing like they want to run the country. So, who Who trips your trigger the most?
Well, it's, no matter who's in office, you need to draw attention to him. I was not the biggest Trump supporter when he was first elected, but you tend to look past the man and you look at his policies and you see that the country was doing much better, during the 4 years that Trump was president. And if you can go back to even some of my early work, I absolutely was not, at first I said, is he serious? Because there's always been rumors he's going to run. But you have to look at the policies. And I do the same thing with currently with Joe Biden. And I feel that this is nothing more than a career politician that's in office. He's run before. He's plagiarized. He's just he hurts the country. So really, whoever holds the seat, has the power, has the target on him.
Yeah, what I was really interested in, and you kind of brought it up, is what prompted you to, in your satirical cartoons, to target proctologists? I mean, what was it about them that you found humorous? I mean, outside of the obvious.
It's amazing. It's funny. 2 more hate mail. This is a little bit older, but I mean, even going back to it, says, I hope your dog gets hit by a bus. Okay. I'm not no problem. I don't even have a dog. I hope you get COVID and die. I mean, some of the hate mail that you do receive, it's just part of, I'm sure you guys see it on your end with some of the stories that you write. I mean, there's a lot of crazy people out there.
Yeah, we like to talk a lot about the next presidential election as a political site. And I'm assuming that Donald Trump would be the best candidate for the purpose of creating content for the cartoon. What I'd like to know is on the Democrat side, if you had to pick one candidate who you think, this person's really going to provide the most content for cartoons going forward for a few years, which of those candidates?
Well, he holds office right now, Scott. So I've got down. He gives me plenty of material on a daily basis, really. And it's the sad part for the Democratic Party is their backup, Kamala Harris, provides even more fodder, really. So, and then what Gavin Newsom, just bring it on.
Let me ask you a question. When you were a child, were you like doodling while everybody else was, looking at the periodic table of, chart?
It's funny you ask that, Lisa. I cannot remember not having a pencil in my hand. I mean, I've drawn since the time I was probably 4 or 5 years old. My mother and my sister were both very artistic. And everybody who grew up in probably when I really started getting into comics, everybody wanted to be, next cartoonist wanted to be the next Gary Larson. And then you start finding yourself getting more and more involved politically and you want to make a difference. And then you see, well, the great thing about an auteur cartoon, it's on the opinion page and you're all by yourself. So next thing you know, you start saying, I think there's a future here. And I've actually, I've been nationally syndicated for 10 years now. And I just really thoroughly enjoy what I do.
Well, your comics are just amazing. I mean, your cartoons every day are getting hit more and more on our site. And you're just you started right out of the box with a bang. We're really proud to have you, Tom.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Well, as for our audience, now you know a little more about how and why we need political humor. And we're so glad that Tom joined us today. Thanks for watching. If you haven't yet, go to Liberty Lampoon at libertynation.com for a good laugh.
Thank you.
Welcome to another snarky episode of Just for Fun. This week, it's all about humorous presidential quotes. Is everybody ready?
Yep.
Yay! So much excitement. Is everybody ready?
Come on, people. Yay. Let's have some fun.
Yay.
And away we go. Okay.
Snarky or us.
These are funny presidential quotes. First one in wins, but try to listen to all the A, B, C, and D. Being president is just like running a cemetery. You've got a lot of people under you and nobody's listening. Was that Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, or Ronald Reagan?
Reagan.
What'd you say, Scott?
Reagan.
Yeah.
Everybody saying Reagan? It was Bill Clinton.
I told somebody once being president is a lot like being superintendent of a big cemetery. There's a lot of people under you and nobody's listening.
Okay.
I thought that was a pretty funny line.
He would have been my second choice. As somebody who was clever enough to come up with that quip.
Yeah.
You know, that's the reason why.
Okay, here we go. Quote, when I take action, I'm not going to fire a $2 million missile at a $10 empty tent and hit a camel in the butt. It's going to be decisive. Was that Lyndon Johnson, Dwight Eisenhower, Donald Trump, or
Donald Trump?
Donald Trump.
Wrong.
Bush.
Bush. Scott is correct. 1 point
Really?
for Scott. Question number 3. Remember, a president of the United States said the following. Recession is when your neighbor loses his job. Depression is when you lose yours. And recovery.
Ronald Reagan.
You are correct. And recovery is when, can you finish it? Jimmy Carter loses his.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
There you go.
A recession is when your neighbor loses his job. A depression is when you lose yours. And recovery is when Jimmy Carter loses his.
Scott, you're down for 2. Scott may get the M&Ms today. Here we go. Ready? A U.S. president actually said this. Blessed are the young, for they will inherit the national debt. Was that Franklin D. Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy, Herbert Hoover, or Calvin Coolidge?
Calvin Coolidge.
I got to go on with Coolidge as well, yeah. Sounds like him.
Any other
Hoover.
guesses?
No, there were
Hoover. Oh, Scott, you are 3 for 3.
Fuego.
You know,
This kid
Graham.
is-
There were too many words for Coolidge. You know.
Oh, yeah, you got to- yeah.
Well, if it wasn't Coolidge, it was definitely going to be Hoover, right? I mean,
Right,
it was
exactly.
elimination.
Yeah.
Okay, and the last one for today. See who wins the M&Ms. There is no pleasure in having nothing to do. The fun is having lots to do and not doing it. Was that Andrew Jackson, Millard Fillmore, FDR, or Donald Trump? There is no pleasure in having nothing to do.
Millard Fillmore.
No, the fun is having
FDR.
no,
Trump.
Donald Trump.
no.
The other guy.
And the other guy.
Andrew Jackson
The other guy.
is the winner.
Andrew Jackson said that? Wow.
Okay, yeah. Andrew Jackson said that. Well, that was pretty good, guys. Out of 5, Scott got 3 and nobody else got the other 2. But let's give a round
Brilliant.
of applause to Mr. Cosenza here.
Great. You know,
Oh.
that's really good.
Oh,
because you
Presidential historian.
Yeah. Scott obviously took Winston Churchill's advice when he said, uneducated people should read books of quotations.
Well, that's it for this edition of Just for Fun. Hope you guys played along and got some of the answers right. Please let us know if you have a fun trivia topic for us. Thanks for watching. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, surf on over to libertynation.com. I'm Lisa Kay Donner, Editor-in-Chief. Thanks for joining us today. This has been a production of libertynation.com, where truth matters.